go ahead and just do a quick introduction on my side. So I'm Sumner, I'm the CEO here at Propensity. And this is kind of the first in a spotlight series that we're doing on different topics around ABM. So in this case, we'll be focusing on ABM to help support event strategies. So we have some really specific examples of things that we've done. Jeff, once he joins, will be able to speak to things that he's done at his agency that's worked really well for his clients. So we have some specific examples we'll walk through. We'll also just walk through kind of other ways to do it down to the tactical level of like list building for and using intent data for events, kind of the before event, the during event, and the after event process. And then this is, like I mentioned, the first in a series of webinars like this that we'll be doing. Things like spotlight series on different verticals. So we have one plan for cybersecurity, another plan for like IT services companies, other plan for SaaS and software companies. So just ABM kind of supporting those particular use cases, and then just going through what's working for our partners, in which case Jeff represents, and then also our clients and our customers. So Jeff, I can see you're in the meeting on the attendee side. We'll get you on the panelist side eventually, but I'm kind of going through the process of just kicking things off here. So, there we go. Perfect. Hey, Jeff.
So my name is Jeff Wells. I am the Senior Director of Marketing Innovation at Analytics, which is a B2B tech marketing agency. And we work with most of the major tech companies, ISVs and SaaS companies and SIs, hyperscalers, and anything from messaging to content development to sales enablement, and most importantly, campaign strategy and execution. I am a lifelong marketer and have been in the tech industry for over about 10 years now. And within my org, I own innovation, marketing innovation, and also am head of all client execution, which is how we came to meet Propensity. And looking for an ABM tool, we kind of realized that that was the right thing for us, and we haven't looked back. And so I'm here to represent how we use that for ABM event execution and do it from the agency perspective.
Awesome. Great overview. So like a true expert. And beyond all that, actually, I think you mentioned to me last week when we were prepping for this, you have a very specific like event style program at your agency. Analytics is the name of the agency, called the Event Booster. Is that right?
Correct. Event Booster. We use it specifically as a product that can help drive engagement and registrations to existing events, or we can help plan an event and wrap the ABM around it. And we'll talk about why that is so important, I think, coming right up here.
I love that. I mean, we're huge fans of playbooks here at Propensity. So when you have like, here's a playbook for a very like isolated use case around event management, and like the pre-event, during event, post-event kind of phases of managing it. I think that always just helps like people, companies execute in a very like structured way. I'm an old school operations guy, so whenever I see workflows like that, it just makes me happy because then you can like elicit some kind of control over the process and measure it on the other side of it. So with that said, maybe I'll share my screen, Jeff, and we'll jump right in to the deck. So we just have like a walkthrough just to keep us focused on the conversation. So I'll jump right in. We introduced ourselves. So I think this is kind of your slide. If you want to just speak to like how you're using ABM in that like booster program, or more generally just in like your event targeting, and what the components of it, like from maybe a list building perspective or from like targeted marketing, like what pieces of ABM are applicable for you in the event side of things.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'll give a little history of how we got here and then why I think ABM is important to our clients, especially as it comes to event marketing. So I think about 3 years ago, our clients would come to us and lead, top of the funnel lead, MQL was like the name of the game for them. Like as many as they could cram into the top of that funnel, that was what they were metriced on. And over these past 3 years, we've seen a huge shift away from that. And it's because, the quality of those leads are subjective, and the limited information they come with And, a lot of times just because somebody's downloading an asset or engaging on a website doesn't mean they're ready or in market for that purchase. And in the end, it ended up just not driving as much pipeline as they thought it would long term. And so now they come to us and they're, metriced on a whole new set of things, which is engagement and that mid to lower funnel activity, how many demos they can get, how many free trials they can get, sales calls, and any kind of ROI calculators or things that are more that bottom to mid funnel. And part of that, events become a huge component of that B2B journey now because of the direct engagement it can offer, or education, one-on-one meeting opportunities and the relationships that build because of that. But as they go to execute those things, it's a whole new now set of challenges, which is low registrations at some of their events and getting registrations, but not the right ones, or their audience as they put those pages out there and they fill up seats. It's not who they have in their ideal customer profile, or low engagement, even people who didn't show up, didn't really show much engagement, and it didn't execute or help execute afterwards into anything or grow into anything more meaningful. And because they've invested so much into that event, they need the ROI out of it. And so they would come to us and say, hey, help us figure this out. And in dissecting that whole process, I think what we, help them realize is that mass outreach doesn't cut it anymore, especially the stuff that they were doing at the top of the funnel to feed. As you're down in this lower level, you need to have a little more control over who you're targeting, what you're targeting, and so that you can get the right people in the seats. Just because somebody matches that customer profile doesn't mean that they're in market or that they're going to be at the right person within that team to go build. And so we started taking that ABM style approach and immediately helped them see better results, like higher quality registrations and engaged attendees within their events, accelerated pipeline. Like one of the things they're really focused on getting in that middle funnel activity, and then even new meeting setups, and they're really meeting those new MQL requirements, and that is what's making it a game changer for the people that we've kind of helped through that journey.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I traditionally think of like ABM and the metric we focus on with our customers, it's sales touches. Like how many sales touches can you generate through an ABM program? And the kind of the end game of it is it should dramatically beat like cold touches, cold outreach. And especially in this day of like anti-spam crackdowns by like Google and LinkedIn and all the big, like even AT&T and Verizon, like putting listing the call as spam if it's from an auto dialer type of motion. So those like the targeted touches that produce higher like response rates or connection rates are really, really valuable. Events is a totally different beast because it's not the same thing as a numbers game. It's like there's a fixed amount of audience. So it is like what you're describing in some ways is like, we know you're going to be there at this event. So it's brand awareness. And we go to Inbound every year and have a booth at the HubSpot conference.
Yeah.
And what we find is when people come to us, they're like, I was on my way to the airport and I saw your ad, or even just walking around the event, we sponsor certain things, and they said, oh, I didn't even know Propensity was here until I saw that ad, and then I came and found the booth. That directly turned into customers for us on the other side of it. So brand awareness through targeted marketing has been, like, I think, kind of the same impact that you're seeing. Like it's a huge, when you hear it at the booth, right? You hear it when they approach the conversation. So the sales and the connection rate there is 100%. There's anybody that approaches the booth, unless they're just looking for socks or some candy or something like that, they pretty much have the conversation. Let's click into the next one here. So actually, along those same lines, so the big question that we've asked ourselves and our clients is like, our customers, how do you know who's going to be at the event? In some cases, if you have a booth, if you have it multiple years in a row, some of the conferences will give you the registrants list, which is a great way to target. You can just load that into your ABM platform and then use that to like serve up ads ahead of time. And then take that with a certain like degree of accuracy, I guess, or maybe even the list doesn't get provided in time, or maybe it's after the event's already registered, whatever the situation is. So there's other ways to use intent data, which I'll just kind of highlight in a second, like how to use intent data. I'll show it to you in Propensity, but it can be used for any intent data provider that you're leveraging. And then this is I mentioned this briefly a second ago, but like geo-targeting works really, really well. Like, around the event, just like within a 2-mile radius of the event itself. So that's like day of type advertising. And then I mentioned the airport as well. Like when you can get in front of people on their way from the airport to the conference, that's a really nice way to do it. And there's our official attendee engagement list. So let me just show real quick. Because I was playing around with the data right before this, Jeff, and
Nice.
what I was basically doing is built out a list of software companies in the United States, and then just the intent layers on top of it. I just wanted to see anybody that's researching HubSpot's inbound conference or Dreamforce or SaaStr. All three of those this year are being held in San Francisco. I think it's like SaaStr's in May, HubSpot's in September, and then right on the heels of that, Dreamforce is in October. So it's just a crazy like injection to the Bay Area economy for a few months. But you can see here, like Achieve It or SageWorks, you can see which ones they're researching or kind of like clicking around articles on. So even without like the attendee list for SaaStr or for Dreamforce or HubSpot, we're able to say, hey, there's a good chance that you're evaluating going, or maybe just looking at the sponsors that are going to be there or something along those lines. So it's a nice way to list build based on intent. And then, now you can find in our case, we'd find all the marketers that are going to go to the HubSpot inbound conference and then target those. So from a list building perspective, analytics, are you guys using some of the using intent data more broadly? Are you using like targeted conference level intent? How are you list building for
I think you nailed it. Talking about the smaller events, you can get that list, just upload those people right into the system. And then what's nice about the platform is that you can sort of fill in the buyer circles a little, even around those people who are attending, and start to give them some brand awareness also. For these larger events, this is exactly what we do. Come in, look for those keywords that they're searching at the company level, try and hone in on, not just the people who are attending too, but also the companies that we know are within our profile that we want to go target. And we'll be able to narrow that list down even further and make it a targeted, ad approach to the specific people, and then even expand that using the buyer circle stuff to sort of, again, fill in that color palette.
That's a great point, because now you're okay. Well, the attendee list is one thing. Let's say for us, let's say we have like a VP of marketing that goes to inbound this year, but there's also the director of demand gen, or the digital advertising specialist, or there's so many other people potentially at that company that we also want to get in front of. And the attendee list will give you maybe the 1 or 2 individuals that have the tickets to the event, but they don't give you the broader buying circle. That's a really nice point, because now you're doing not just ABM targeting of the attendees, you're doing ABM targeting of the buying circle at the companies that are sending representatives there. And it just gives you a more full, still laser targeted, but like a more full persona that you're going after across the entire base.
And if you can get engagement within the campaignery across the company and still have that one person show up and interact at the booth, it makes that business to the sales representative a lot more valuable than it is if you just have the one interaction at the booth.
That I hadn't totally unpacked that mentally, but I think that's because we've seen after our conferences, like the post-conference engagement, we'll do the same thing, right? We'll target like the attendees, but then also everybody else that is at the company in the buying circles, in those personas. And what we end up hearing is, especially coming out of an event, a lot of the times people are overwhelmed with everything that they saw. So it's just too much information to like even parse back through unless they're like, unless they basically made a decision or have put you into evaluation at the conference or you've booked a meeting with them.
Yeah.
Staying top of mind is hard because they're going to get 1,000 emails after the event, but the ones that don't get the emails are their managers or their colleagues that didn't go to the event. So you're able to like, I guess, massage the entire buying circle at the company, even the non-attendees, and those are the ones that are less targeted on a follow-up basis. And we found that they're brought to the table as far as decision making goes, as much as the attendees, or maybe even more so, because the attendees were there to scope things out, but the decision maker just stayed back and waited for a recommendation. And by targeting them as well as the attendees, you're getting out ahead of it. So when you have that follow-up demo or that next conversation, the decision makers in the loop, even if they didn't go to the event. So that kind of comes full circle, and I don't think should be overlooked in terms of audience building. It's more than the attendees. It's like everybody that matters at that company to your buying the evaluation process and the customer's journey.
Absolutely. Something else we use this exact part of the tool for: come in, find those companies, start the campaign to target, and then as we start to see some of those companies that show interest, we can invite them to a smaller, happy hour dinner event that's published exactly for those people we know we're going to get a higher engagement from, and that allows us to get the people to those smaller one-on-one or 10-to-1 events that really matter to the sales team and matter to the company. And again, this really helps you sort of start before that event, get some activity, plan some other things at the event that can still, you're going to get some people to come to the booth, especially if you're giving stuff away. But if you can have those sort of ancillary meetings or events, it's going to really help boost the ROI that you put into it.
That's a smart way to do it, again, because you're basically like shaking the sand through the sifter. It's like, okay, here's everybody. Okay, well, the next layer are the most engaged people. Let's take those most engaged, or like in the traditional sense, it's like from awareness to consideration. Let's find the consideration people and put them into a personalized invitation to an event like that we're hosting at a restaurant or something like that around the corner. That's a smart way to like not just blast everybody equally, but like really focus in on, oh, you're visiting our website, you're clicking on our ads. We're going to invite you and again, ancillary like persona members or buying circle as well to this event. So we're out in front of this. Every once in a while we get the response, oh yeah, I'm not going, but my colleague Steve is, so I'll let him know. And then the Steve ends up showing up at the event.
Absolutely. And it really helps bridge the gap too, we find, between the sales and marketing teams, because it's not just marketing doing a bunch of stuff, having the event afterwards, and then passing all this stuff to sales and say, have fun. Like,
yeah,
we're engaged in that process, saying, hey, we've got some activity before the event. Why don't you reach out to these folks and see if you can get them to attend your happy hour, your dinner, and they're automatically bought in, and it helps really drive that whole lead engagement and sales engagement all the way through the end.
I love that. I mean, I'm just like maybe the core theme of this kind of spotlight session that we're doing here is like how ABM's targeted marketing, but it's also like broadens that audience to be that entire buying circle. And then with that in mind, you get all of those pieces that come together. And it's not just like, oh, here's Steve and Steve alone. Now it's like, here's Steve and Joe and Samantha and everybody we're targeting. I really like the kind of ABM as like an expanded audience tool as well. I think that maybe goes under the radar in terms of the value of a good ABM program to do audience expansion within a list that you've built for a particular event. That way you just create that full coverage area.
And the key is that you're expanding to the companies that are likely to convert, not to the mass pool that you're going to drop, an 80% rate of people who aren't. So
that's a great point. I mean, there's a couple other ways we get targeted as a sponsor of these events, right? And people are like, oh, I saw you sponsored last year, so you must be sponsoring again this year. So that's a decent way to do it. But now you're targeting sponsors, and that's not the point of those events for us. So that those messages are like, they're a dime a dozen, it feels like, and they don't really help the seller or the marketer get our attention because we're going there with a different purpose. So the list build for, like, I just keep thinking, like, if we go to, let's say we attend SaaStr this year as a SaaS company, and my colleague Carla goes to the event. Um, if somebody was able to identify, first of all, we're researching SaaStr, Carla's going to go, maybe they have an attendee list, but they start targeting me and our colleagues Marielle and Lacey and a few other people within the organization. Even though I'm not going, like, I'll be attentive if they're, especially if their messaging says something about SaaStr, because I know we're investing in that, right? Like, it's an attendance portion of things. So I could double click on that like the rest of the time here, I think, because it's such a powerful tool to, like, do targeted audience expansion, which, is very, very different than lookalike audience expansion, like you said, at the account level. This is within those companies. So that's a great kind of takeaway here. I'll kind of move on. I'm excited to hear your take on this one, because this is a Jeff special here. So this isn't something we prepared. So I'd love to hear your kind of thoughts on this.
So when we talk to our clients about that event booster product we were just talking about, this is how we represent sort of that, ideal attendee. And you can have a bunch of people that show up to your webinar, and this, again, doesn't have to be just for in-person events. It's for virtual events. It's for smaller roundtable type meetings. It's for just about anything. And so it's that, hey, we don't want people in the seats. We want to target people around that location. Let's use geo where it makes sense. It doesn't always, but a lot of times it does. And it really helps, separate where a company is headquartered. Like, you're targeting at the person level, and it's where that person resides, regardless of where their company is. And it really helps you, kind of add to the list you would normally have.
That's right.
You get that ideal customer. That's the companies. We only want to target companies that are within that, hey, these are the people who usually come. These are the people that make the most sense for us because they have the right types of budgets, or they have the right type of maturity in a certain area that would indicate that, we'd be a good fit for them. And we want to make sure we're including, sort of that signal that's coming out of within the regular organization. Of course, intent data, one of the most important things is that company in market for what you are offering now, recently new. And so we can say, cool, so now we know we've got an event located in an area. We've got, yes, this is the right company. Oh, this person works within that company, and someone at that company is really interested in what's going on within our solution area. And now, how do we then take that and expand to those roles, like we talked about, that buyer circle of the right people that we want to talk to within that organization, and then we'll target only people that fit within that whole perspective. And so every registration we get, every person that shows up, every lead that comes in should be within that, higher MQL threshold that our clients have today.
Yeah, this is a good summary slide of everything we've been talking about so far from the audience side of things, because you've got your ICP, you've got, like, the expanded audience of the buying circle, you've got the attendee themselves, you've got the intent data layer, and then you've got, what we talked about, you can also term as geofencing around the proximity of the event. I think these intent data, ideal customer, buying circle, the attendee, these four let you do get like person level analytics back, like which person is interacting with my ads, which person is clicking and going to the website. This one gives you kind of like a more, I don't want to use the word, it's not a bad word, but more traditional marketing metrics, right? Like, you get more of, like, impressions and clicks in and around the event itself. So it's less person level traffic, because you're not targeting specific organizations, you're targeting a location. But it fits into this puzzle of, like, give us the awareness we need. And again, event location, I just in September last year, I remember being at Inbound, and people would stop by and be like, hey, I just saw your ad. Like, and it was either because they were part of an ABM campaign, or it was geofencing, and they stopped by the booth because of that. So, like, real-time ad serving at the event, it can't be, like, overstated the value of that, because they're on their phones, right? Like they're flicking through the thing all the time while they're at these events.
Absolutely. And as you walk through those larger scale events, especially the big ones, it's just so overwhelming when you see a booth or a company that has been on your mind recently. It's instantly like, something I know because, I've interacted with it at least once or seen it, or it's been in my peripheral. And I know I am more inclined to go gravitate to that because
Yeah.
it's familiar.
I mean, I'll tell you again, right before you joined this call, I was showing off the puppy. The amount of puppy ads that I'm seeing now that I'm way more inclined to click on than I ever have before is like it's pretty pervasive right now. And so it's like, that's the simple like one-to-one retargeting that they're doing. This allows you to get that same sort of feeling, even if like I didn't click on a Facebook ad for chew toys or something like that, right? Like if somebody clicks on the traditional B2C model of like, oh, I looked at the boots and now I'm being targeted for boots. This is almost captures some of that sense where you're like, oh, I was just thinking about ABM or researching. In our case, ABM, but like it could be researching anything. It could be researching your software or something like that, and now I'm seeing ads for it. My wife and I always joke like, "Oh, our washing machine's having problems, and now all of a sudden I'm getting ads from Whirlpool. Like somebody must have heard us talk about it, right? Like it's that same sentiment that you can capture here, almost from like again, this is something that I'll probably mentally unpack more as we go through it, but it almost turns a B2B marketing motion into the same directness and like familiarity as that B2C retargeting motion, which is, I think, really effective, like super effective, right from the standpoint of like, oh yeah, my cart is still full of that chew toy. I better go click checkout. The only difference, I guess, is spontaneity of it. Like there's less spontaneity in B2B purchases. So what you're really looking for is less of a checkout and more of a conversation to get, be part of an evaluation. All right. So actually, let me click escape. I forget whose slide this is. This is yours. Okay, good. I was like, let me make sure I understand who's going through this one. So if you want to speak to, like, I love this idea, the common pitfalls, because we've talked so much about like the audience building tactics that work and the uniqueness of it. But any lessons learned from stepping on the landmines?
Absolutely. So we've got a few things here, and of course, I'm sure you've got some too. So feel free to chime in with me. I guess we touched on this a little bit, so I won't over focus on it. But it's that over reliance on mass outreach. Like you can't just go into Google and set up a campaign and use their interest groups or affinity groups and hope that you're going to get the right people to show up. You're just going to get poor quality leads. So make sure you're focused on the right companies, the right people within those companies, and the people who are at least attached to that event in some way. I think one of the big things we see is people often targeting too high within an organization, especially at these events. You get a lot of, oh yeah, so yeah, the CEO and the CFO and the CIO are definitely our decision maker, and we want to target those people. And if you think about things like cloud migration or AI strategy or IoT implementation, that could be the case because they're driving that sort of top-down thought leadership. But in most cases, you're not at that level. You're at a director level, a senior VP level, or even like senior manager level. And so we really try and coach that, hey, people going to the events here, the people you need to listen to or want to hear what you have to say, or the ones researching are probably a couple levels below that. Let's start there and let it sell up throughout.
Yeah, those are some really good points. I was trying to think of like scenarios where we've like with our customers and with us, we've targeted the not the wrong mix of people, but like expected. Maybe it's the wrong messaging is another layer of that. Where HubSpot has both users and agencies at HubSpot. So it's like, well, who are we targeting? Are we targeting partnerships through agencies as Propensity, or are we targeting the end users of HubSpot and the direct buyers? And we toggled with that. The first year we were there, we were like, oh man, like we were targeting one of the two, and we didn't capture both messages for both personas. With ABM, it's really easy to do that. We can, oh, we're going to put you in the partner category, and we're going to put you in the potential, the prospect category, and target you separately. But I think that messaging needs to translate into the booth as well. So you need to have your kind of event level messaging reflect your understanding of the audience that's going to be at that event. Dreamforce is totally different than inbound as far as the mix of that. Like, there's so many more Salesforce admins, right, that are going to be there. It's like, and like the consultants and the implementers, and then the like other companies that are selling services on top of Salesforce. So it's almost like an ecosystem represented there. Whereas with HubSpot, it's either, for the most part, partner or customer. And then SaaSter's a little different as well. Like, you have CTOs walking around with chief growth officers, and founders. So I think it's a really interesting, like, the audience pool that you're going after. We didn't shoot ourselves in the foot with it, but we didn't take full advantage of it the first year we did Unbound, because we were too focused on one persona and hadn't like fully extracted the value across it. So you and I have been talking a lot about like audience building, but you can put too tight of a lens on that within your ICP. So just to go back a slide, you may have multiple ICPs at an event, right? And then now you can just duplicate this kind of slide and think about, well, who's your ideal attendee within this ICP, within this buying circle, within this intent signal, and then a separate one for another ICP. I might even further that to say, like, down to the product line level as well. We work with a lot of private equity firms that have acquired different companies over the years, and they'll want to target like company A for their first product line, and then maybe cross sell them into a second product. There's so much mix at the product level. So I would say, just maybe if we pull one step backwards, a pitfall would be to overly narrowly focus into one ICP without truly understanding the audience mix at an event and what would be represented on the floor when they're walking around. Because otherwise they'll just walk right past you. They'll be like, oh, that's not for me. I'm going to go to the next booth.
Absolutely. You see that all the time. Like a lot of AI type messaging or really high level messaging when you're at like a tech conference, and it's just like, these people, man, they don't care. Like, they're trying to get their day-to-day problem solved, and they might be tasked with figuring out what kinds of things works, but you're saying completely the wrong thing in booth after booth after booth.
I went to an event once. I think it was the Forrester event in Austin. And there was a company there that had, like, their tagline was the Salesforce connected website. And I was like, that is so crisp and so clean. And like, if I want that, I know exactly where to go to get it. And then I saw the same company at an event a few months later, and they had changed their tagline, and it just sounded more ambiguous. There wasn't really a hook anymore. And I was like, you guys now just are one of the crowd. Like, you stood out at one point, and then you removed the attraction, and now you're just kind of more traditional. So I think you can be a little bit more evocative. I used to work for a company that would go to financial events with a bunch of banks. So the banks would have booths, and they said, skip the bank was their tagline. So it was like a direct counterpoint to everything else going on around them. And they drove so much like engagement and business from those events, especially when they're talking to like small business owners that already have misgivings about banking partnerships. It really spoke to their audience super well and was their biggest channel for a long, long time. So that type of messaging, that type of like knowing your audience, knowing what matters to them, and like a catchphrase can bleed through every touch point. And I guess not doing that, no matter how much ABM you do, if you're not like speaking to your audience, it becomes that maybe that's the ultimate pitfall is, message market fit not being completely aligned there.
Well said.
All right.
I've got one more, which is going to pull us right into this one, but you can flip to the slide so that works out. That is only using ABM to drive, the promotions of that event, instead of using it to help drive what's going on during the event, using it to follow up after the event. Like, it is a complete motion end to end. And if you don't leverage it end to end, then you're really missing out on some of the best stuff and the ROI within that event.
That's such a good point. We're 6 months removed from the inbound event. I keep some last September inbound, and we still see book demos coming from that because we're still pursuing the post-event follow-up, and we incentivize like our sales team to follow up with those ABM leads that we're just continually taking top of mind with. Maybe they were interested last September, but they weren't even ready to evaluate. But it's March, and we've just stayed top of mind with them, and now they're interacting with us. It's steady. It's a year. Like that event continues to produce, for us at least, year round, and we track those lead sources in our CRM system, so we can see this lead was originated from this conference's, this conference's attendee list, or this ABM campaign that was focused on this conference. So, letting it. I know it's hard because so much work goes into event prep and event management, and then you come back and you're like, "Whew, I'm done with this." But like, yeah, you're like, "Cool, we accomplished our goals. We got whatever we got. We're moving on." But if you can just set up an autopilot, like always on after event, like touch point motion between marketing and sales, and just it's just the same thing as any other ABM campaign, like stack rank them by engagement level. So if they're like, okay, they were at the event, they've never engaged with us post event, they stay cold. But if they're clicking on your ads and going to your website, they're just going to become hot, just like any other lead. So I guess the point is, like, just don't turn off the ABM campaigns after the event. If anything, like add more audience to it based on who you interacted with at the event, and it'll just keep producing, and then you can keep tracking ROI of that investment for until the next conference comes around again next year.
Absolutely. And there's so much noise around those events when you go, that being in it early and being in it late is going to be how you stand out, because you're getting so many messages like right up before, during, right after that. If you could extend beyond that or get started like long enough before, you're really going to see that improvement in brand awareness and engagement long term.
There's another maybe point buried in that's like, well, what are you sending to them after the event? It's like to keep them engaged. And I always love just thinking of ABM as a content delivery vehicle. So if you consider, like, we're not just saying, hey, nice to see you at the event, let's talk soon. We're saying, hey, if you went to this event, it's most likely you're interested in this type of content. So let's keep providing that type of valuable content for you, and like rotating the content on a monthly basis is a good just ballpark. So, September, they get this content. October, they get this piece. November, December, whatever it is, they just keep going. And then you're just continuously like, you're almost like, it's like if they subscribe to your blog, but instead of subscribing to your blog, they're just viewing ads where you're serving the blog content to them on a monthly basis. And that, like, first of all, just from a best practices around ABM, I just love that because it produces value from an ad, and that typically gets more clicks. But it also, from a a freshness perspective, gives you the ability to stay top of mind over those longer time horizons. So when they're ready, they're like, oh yeah, I've been seeing this. I've been getting educated along the way, and now I'm an educated buyer when it comes time to evaluate the product. So that after the event thing, I mean, you can be as sophisticated as that, or you can just be like kind of running an always on evergreen ad that's just converts well. Both of those are effective, but I love the rotated content that is high value throughout the life cycle.
Absolutely. We also segment some of those lists when we come back from those larger events, or our clients do, like, and try and figure out how to serve the content to that segment that they need at that moment. So if we feel like someone's a little further down that decision point, we'll give them the more bottom funnel content versus our drip up at the top. And that we will do exactly like the long-term, so here's a newsletter once in a while, versus that more sales focused type stuff for the other segments.
Yeah, I think you just described the dream state. That's true campaign orchestration based on like engagement level. So if they're cold, they get this messaging. If they start to engage, they move out of the cold bucket and into the the warm or the hot, like, retargeting bucket. And then if they become an opportunity, then they're in the pipeline acceleration bucket. And you can just like automate that engine where your ABM campaigns align directly with the buyer's journey through the entire funnel. That, to me, like, when we work with companies, they start with broad sweeping ABM campaigns to drive top of funnel, but they inevitably move towards like campaign orchestration where marketing and sales are totally aligned to the buyer's journey, click by click. And to your point, like you're just serving different content to those that are engaged versus those that are unengaged, until they interact and start clicking. That's a really nice way to think about, like, I would say before event, you mentioned it earlier, you're like, hey, here's the cold list that we're going after. These people engaged, so now we're going to invite them to the pre-event party. And then after the event, it's like, okay, here's the cold post event. Here's the people that are engaging. And now we're going to provide them some additional content or maybe different messaging that would be more direct to the intent signals they're trending on, or even like the psychographic data they're exhibiting at a buyer, like at a person contact level. So there's a bunch of different ways to cut that. That I would say that's like going from beginner to advanced ABM. It's the way you can manage those things. You can still get a ton of value out of the beginner steps. And then the advanced stuff is like, now you're fine tuning your touches and measuring like every element of your ABM campaigns without, needing a PhD in ABM to do it.
A great point to start small though, if it's something you're doing new.
Yeah. Let's see. I know I haven't been able to track time here. Maybe we have let me just check, see where, this is the last slide. So we're right on point here.
This is the last slide and I can get us through it pretty quick.
Yeah, let's do it.
So these are some recent examples of that event booster campaigns that we've been running for clients. Two really great ones, both for large cloud hyperscalers. And one of them came to us recently and needed to drive registrations to an event that was attached to a cloud summit that was in New York, I think. And the problem for them is, if they're doing, was like an industry focused team, a smaller segment within the larger company, and they can't send out emails through their corporate system because it's just like one small event for one industry at one, thing. So they sent out emails to their sales team. It didn't get them anything, came and said, hey, we really need to like drive some registrations to this event because we've only got like 100 and we need a lot. And so quickly we were able to get them use that geo-targeting within that, time frame for the event, or area around the event, target within the time frame that people were going to be at that event. And we got them over 800 registrations for that event within a very short amount of time. And they were thrilled to death with that.
I can imagine. That's a great, like a 6x multiplier on registrations is a pretty big improvement. That's wonderful.
And key also to that is we didn't have a list to go after from that event. So we had to use the keywords within the thing of people who might have been searching or are attached to the company, and then be able to target the buyer circle roles that we thought might be interested in. That's how we achieved it. Okay. Similar one here. This was not a larger scale event, but they had a small AI roundtable attached with a partner. Weren't getting a whole lot of bites on the attendance for that. And so we were again able to use that geo-targeting around that event attached to the both the IPC and keywords around that. And within a couple of days, filled up that event and then had to like cut the campaign short because they couldn't, handle any more registration. So two great examples of using the ABM. And it's because we had sort of those it wasn't just an email going out to a team. It was leveraging all of the tools in the playbook of digital ads and LinkedIn ads and emails together that really sort of circle around that person that you want, the very exact person to get them to show.
That's awesome. That's like, it's cool to see the data prove out, right? Like of the strategy and the tactics working with numbers, right? I mean, this is what companies need, is like the proof and the data that comes back. I'll stop sharing while we recap here. So I think that's a really great set of examples, and we see the same things on our side. It depends on the event that we're targeting attendance at, but so maybe I'll kind of weave in an example and a recap so we can close out here. But so like one of the big takeaways is that audience expansion targeting, and I think one of the threads to pull out with that is, well, this this company is researching, I'll just use inbound since that continues to be the example. They're researching inbound, and these 5 people at that company have psychographic data that shows that they have skills in HubSpot as a technology stack. So even if they're not going to inbound, they're interested in maybe who is going, or the speakers that are going to be there, or like the value of their HubSpot implementation. So then we can speak to that like through an audience expansion, audience building, audience expansion within a targeted account list. And I think when we do stuff like that, the responses we get can be like, "We're not going this year. I wish I was. We're going to watch online, but I'd love to talk." And that still works from a like a book demo perspective. We credit that back to the ABM motion around that event, and that's a constant performer for us, where we just are like, "Hey, it looks like this is important for you, or this is happening for you. If so, do you mind if we send you some material on that?" And that's the general like sentiment. It's like an opt-in style touch, where we're asking for their permission before we send any content to them. Just, hey, can you verify that you're going to this event, or like interested in HubSpot, or in HubSpot's inbound conference? Or we do a lot of that with competitor conquest too. Can you verify that you're interested in ABM and looking at these competitors? We'd love to participate in your evaluation. And that, like, using those tactics that you just mentioned, for us, it drives book demos. For one of your clients, it drives registrations and event bookings and things like that. So that audience expansion piece is maybe the cornerstone of building it right, building good event motion. We also talked about the messaging, making sure you've got the right message to the ICP that's going to be there. And then let's see, there were a bunch of other topics. Maybe those were the 2 core that I took away from this, that like are like, if you do both of those things, and then the before, during, and after, like that campaign orchestration, maybe those are the 3 cornerstones of what we just covered, Jeff.
I was just going to say, it's that get them early, stay in for the long term, because you will continue to see those conversions even though the event is over. And we see it time and time again. People they get home and they're like, "Oh, that was good, it was fun," and then immediately want to just pass leads off and be done. And
That's right. That's right. Good stuff. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate the time. We'll definitely post this online so that we can share this kind of with a broader audience. But I think this is like, this is the first in what we're calling the Spotlight series. So this is our spotlight on ABM for event management, event kind of registrations and such. And then we're kind of going to go from here. But this is a great conversation, lots of good points. I was definitely like totally zoned in on. I think we're a good match between analytics and propensity. I think it fits kind of the two approaches kind of fit hand in glove there.
It really does. Appreciate you having me here today. It was great talking.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Good to talk to you. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.